Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Apologies for the haggard look, the slightly drained and knackered face. It's part of the crazy week I explained last time. And look, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it, even if I am running on fumes a little bit now. But yeah, it's part of it all. And in press conference attire as well. I've come straight from that. I'm trying to point to my shirt despite the fact that my hands aren't even on the screen. Shows how knackered I am. Look, I'm not working down the mines. I'm not working on the front lines of the hospitals or anything like that. I'm just a man who covers Tottenham Hotspur. And any of you who know what life is like in the world of Tottenham Hotspur, it's always kind of going from the, I was going to say sublime to the ridiculous, but it's kind of more mad to the ridiculous. We get some sublime moments, but often mad and ridiculous. So this week, yeah, I would have loved to have done a video a little bit earlier in the week, but it hasn't really worked out that way. We had the annual reporters versus club staff match on Monday at Hotspur Way. We won again, for anyone interested. Same as last year, went to penalties and we won on that. I was actually saved from having to take a penalty. I was all ready to. I've taken penalties all my life in football. That makes it sound like I've played at World Cups or something. I'm very much talking about Sunday League kind of level. But as it was, the penalty before me was saved. So I was the 7th and I did not have to take a penalty, but 2-2 in the game. For those really interested in it. It was a decent level. It was probably a better level than last year. I think the standard was a lot better. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about a game where obviously the quality is far below anything else we're going to talk about in this video in terms of various things. So that was Monday, had the pre-match press conference. Then came Man City on Tuesday. We know what happened there, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then the mad press conference afterwards, which I found myself slap bang in the middle of, as usual. I don't know why. Whatever manager it is, I seem to just be in the middle of the madness. I guess technically I insert myself into the middle of the madness, so I have no kind of excuse. But I do. And yeah, Ange decided to open up to me that day. Decided to open up to me again today, which we'll talk about. I don't know where that came from, but it's lots for us to talk about. So Man City match Tuesday night. Got home at 1 a.m. Then had to be at Stansted Airport at 5:30 in the morning to get a flight to Stockholm. Very good flights, £45 return or so. There I spent a couple of days talking to people about Lucas Bergvall and then going to watch the man himself and have a chat with him afterwards. We're going to discuss all of that a little bit later. Really enjoyed that. Really exciting to see kind of... I'm very fortunate enough that I get to... Well, mainly in the first half of seasons before it gets a bit mad, but I get to see a fair bit of the Spurs Academy youngsters coming through. It's quite cool to be able to go and see a young player that's going to come to from another country and seeing a different perspective that comes with that and the people over there. And yeah, we'll talk about that all in a bit. So yeah, this morning, very early on, when I get up about 5:30 Swedish time, which was 4:30 here, got myself to a train to Västerås, which if you're not aware of the various airports around Stockholm, I probably picked the furthest one. It was probably why the flights were cheapest. It's also a very small airport. To kind of put that into context and explain how I know that, other than the fact it was very small when I got there, the departures and arrivals screen only had one plane on each. And it was the same plane. It was the plane that was coming from Stansted to come and, I was going to say, get me. As long as it's just me, it's not my private jet. I employ entire Ryanair jets. The Ryanair flight was coming from Stansted and 25 minutes was going back the other way. I took a photo of it because I have never seen... I've been to some small airports, but I've never seen one where there is one going out and one coming in, and it is the same plane. So yeah, mad dash then after landing, straight to get to Hotspur Way with about 15 minutes to spare before Ange's press conference today, which was a really good one. It's a really strong press conference. I'm going to talk to you about some of the quotes that were within it, some of the things he said. Again, I don't know why, for some reason, he kind of opened up into a bit of a monologue for me, I guess, which was actually quite a departure from the answer that he gave me that kind of kicked everything off the other day, but equally newsworthy, really interesting. So yeah, I'll get a day's rest tomorrow, and then I'm heading off to Melbourne for that craziness that comes with that. But we'll talk about that later. So yeah, where to start? I'll tell you what, let's start with the press conference today. It is the latest bit of kind of news, and it's something I can kind of get my teeth into it and kind of explain to you a little bit more about kind of how it was behind the scenes with this and everything. Obviously, we've had all of the post-Man City stuff and how some fans have been very upset with the stuff that Ange said, which, again, I'm kind of going to do it a bit backwards. I'm going to talk about what he said today and then go back slightly. Kind of a bit like the movie Memento, the Christopher Nolan early one. We'll start from the end. But yeah, you'll have seen it. You'll know it. If you're Spurs fans, of course you are. What non-Spurs fans are going to watch this? It's kind of split people the way Ange was after the game. There's a fair few people have taken offence at some of the stuff he said. Some people agree with what he said. And obviously it all, of course, centres around the Man City game, Arsenal, whether people wanted Spurs to win or they wanted them to lose, and whether they wanted to stop Arsenal winning the Premier League title. It feels like, I know this is my first video since, but it feels like I've kind of written and did the podcast yesterday as well and kind of spoken so much about it. It just feels like it's frazzled my brain. You know my thoughts on it all because I said it in the last video, so I'm not saying it with hindsight. I sound like a woman off of Married at First Sight then. Married at First Sight Australia, not the UK one. As you might have heard me say before, that's like the one bit of kind of trashy TV I do have a very guilty pleasure of watching. How Married at First Sight knocked me off, of course. It's not with hindsight. Beforehand, I stated very clearly ahead of the game, my feelings always were, I understand why Spurs fans would not want Arsenal to win the title. Absolutely. Who wants all the bragging that would bring and stuff like that? However, I think I remember, I definitely said this at the end, I think, of the last video, that it's not for, I couldn't bring myself to want my team to lose a game of football. That's not doing down any other people's views on that. We're all allowed to support football clubs in the way we want to support them, absolutely. And I know this was a bit of a unique scenario in a way as well, which maybe created different scenarios for some people of looking at it than they normally would. But just for me, I don't know, and maybe this comes across in my reporting, maybe this comes across in the way you'll see me act on social media and stuff. I just don't care in the slightest about other teams. I just don't. And maybe that helps me. Maybe it helps me in the way I report on Spurs. I'm so singly focused on Spurs and covering them to such a degree that I probably actually miss stuff that's going on at other clubs and like big general news stories that other people are aware of because I'm so focused on every little aspect of Tottenham Hotspur. So when it comes to Arsenal, yeah, of course, as a kid growing up and as a fan, you never wanted Arsenal to win. That was the kind of point of it. But I kind of felt that there was still a divide that I would still always want Spurs to win because ultimately I don't really care what happens to Arsenal. But I know, look, this is the trouble. Everyone now at the moment, we're in a world where everyone takes offence at everything. So even what I've just said there, I'm just explaining it's my view. Some people will take offence at that. I'm not telling you how to support stuff. I'm just telling you that's my way of looking at things. I just don't care what happens to Arsenal. I look at it as a whole season. I don't look at it as one match hands a team the title. Technically, Spurs took points off Man City and Arsenal this season, earlier on in the season. So they've kind of affected it in two different ways. It's a 38-game season for me, but that is just the way I look at it. Ange said his stuff, which of course carries far more weight than anything I say, and fans got very angry indeed about it. And I think he upset a lot of people with the way he said he went about things and the way he said it, rightly or wrongly. And I've seen differing views on it even since the kind of debate rages on. But what was important about today was he spoke very well, and I felt he found a slightly better balance to it. I think he, this sounds kind of weird in saying, but I think he and I kind of share quite a similar view in it, or maybe it was more similar today than it was previously. And that was his big problem as well, was I did feel like he went into the game on Tuesday believing like everything is fine. Like everything I was going to do the Lego movie thing, everything is awesome. That, you know, no Spurs fans going to want their own team to lose. And I think he got to Tuesday night, it was like, whoa, okay, I was wrong, which is essentially admitted today in this press conference. And I think that kind of hit him a little bit harder. And yeah, this press conference was a lot of kind of redressing that balance slightly, explaining his attitude towards it a little bit more, and explaining that he did kind of understand where people were coming from, but didn't. If you see what, we'll get to the quotes. We'll get to the quotes. It's the easiest way of saying it. First off, one of the very simple things to team news for Sunday's game, Giovanni Lo Celso is out with a knock. Yes, I know. How many times have I said Giovanni Lo Celso has a knock? Didn't train today. I'm presuming we're not going to see him at the match, which sadly for probably Gio is going to sum up his time at Tottenham. If that ends up, would have been potentially the last match he'll ever play for Tottenham. If he does leave this summer, he will have missed it through injury. And I think for a guy that's been there for 5 years, well, contracted to the club for 5 years, he has not played enough football for Tottenham Hotspur. He hasn't, whether that is through injury, whether that is through managers just not fancying him in terms of not his looks or anything, but getting him out there on the football pitch. It's up to you to decide, but he's definitely had too many injuries. So yeah. So what's the best quote to start with out of the bunch? I've got them all here in front of me. He was asked about, so if you're not aware, I asked him as the third question of the press conference after the match, I asked him about whether he could see, because it was a good performance. We'll talk a little bit about that later. I felt it was quite a good performance against City on the whole, much better than some of the recent games. And I kind of said, could you see elements within that you can build foundations upon for next season? To which he said, I've got the previous quotes have gone out of my head, but it was roughly something along the lines of, no, mate, actually in the last 48 hours I've realised that the foundations are pretty fragile. And yeah, it's something he's got to work on. So he was asked today, one of the first questions, so have you fixed those issues? And it was, even I was a bit like, where? Already? And he said, no, not in 2 days, mate. No, I think, as I said at the time, we've got some work to do. That's clear and evident. That's what we need to focus on. And yeah, I think it was kind of skip. There was a lot of kind of stuff early on about, he was asked about Celtic winning the title. He was asked about a Dejan Kulusevski interview this week. He was asked about Rodrigo Bentancur. So Rodrigo Bentancur, after he was taken off against Man City, had an epic meltdown, an epic tantrum of sorts. I'd like to say an outpouring of passion. That sounds even weirder. No, I'm not going to say that. I retract that statement, Your Honour. Yeah, he was just angry. That's probably the best way to put it. So we had this very strange moment where he'd come off after a reasonably decent performance on the whole. Again, another thing we're going to discuss when we talk about the match. And he came off and absolutely kicked to pieces with his studs pretty much his chair in the dugout, his seat in the dugout. To which poor Brian Hill was like, I've never seen Brian Hill look so confused and frightened. He was like a small woodland animal just staring up at Rodrigo Bentancur like, please don't hurt me. And then when he did sit down finally, Bentancur, Brian Hill just put this little hand on his leg, which I thought was really quite funny. And so yeah, on the day, a Tuesday night, Postecoglou was asked about that, and he was like, didn't see it, don't care, essentially, because he was in that kind of mood after the game. And he was asked a bit more about it today and said, like, have you seen it since, and have you spoken to him? And he said, yeah, I saw it, we had a chat about it. He was angry, but I don't think that's the way you react. He understands that, but it wasn't the biggest issue of the night for me, and that's for sure. And he was asked what he felt he was annoyed about, Bentancur, and Postecoglou said, well, he just wants to win. He wanted to be out there helping the team to win, and he felt he wanted to be out there fighting. So yeah, he had kind of compromised himself a little bit, which we will discuss. It was mainly around the yellow card, really. So yeah, I then, later on in the press conference today, I kind of kicked him off into a bit of a monologue without realising it was coming. So I was quite surprised no one had asked it yet, but no one asked about the fact that Postecoglou, the first time I've seen it, had a bit of an altercation with a fan behind the dugout. Someone must have been yelling something at him, And he turned and had a bit of a kind of a verbal volley back again, and essentially was just challenging him to say it again, and then saying that he knew who he was and all this sort of stuff. It was a bit of a kind of a, yeah, keep going, mate, I'm going to get you kicked out kind of thing. And that was unusual for me because I think Postecoglou is probably one of the calmest managers I've ever seen on a touchline. Yeah, once in a while he'll shout at his players and he might complain about the odd decision even though he doesn't say he does. He would maybe argue he's not complaining, he's more pointing it out to the officials. But on the whole, he is a pretty calm and measured guy. He's always said himself, he observes games, doesn't want to be part of it. It's like watching a movie. He only wants to observe it to the absolute maximum he can, so that when he has to make a decision in game management, he's taking everything in and has got all the information rather than being distracted. But that was a little bit different on Tuesday. He was quite kind of irate on the touchline, going up and down. It didn't look himself, and then he has this altercation with the fan. So I asked him, kind of, you're normally like that. Why were you like that? And what made you react to that fan the way you did? And I didn't realise that I was kind of starting a bit of a monologue. So I'm going to read it out. So apologies if it's story time with Alistair, but I do feel like it gives you a really great insight. If you haven't seen it or read it, heard it already from the press conference today, I think it's quite an important thing to kind of talk about. So he said, 2 separate issues. I think if you're going to sit behind the bench, especially in a home game, you've got to be respectful when you're in earshot of the most important people. He wasn't happy we just conceded a goal, so I turned around to find out what his problem was, and he used language that he shouldn't, and he was abusive. And if I hear that, I don't care who it is, I will deal with that. He's not a fan of bad language, which is, it's funny when you think about it in football, it's just kind of such a prevalent thing. It's just there, isn't it? And you hear it on the football pitch so much, but he is not. He's absolutely not a fan of it. So he said, but he is more than welcome to come back next time and take his seat up and express his opinions. If he swears, if he is abusive, he will cop the same treatment from me again. But at the same time, you also feel, well, mate, I cop it at opposition grounds every week. Give me a break at my home ground. Then he went to explain his overall general demeanour on the night and why he was so agitated on the touchline. He said, I'll try to explain it this way. That was probably the worst experience I've had as a football manager in a game, because once I realised I'd got it wrong in terms of what the atmosphere was going to be like and what people felt, I got a real anxiety within me of what happens if Man City, who are the best team in the world, who were disposing teams quite easily in the lead up, 4 at Brighton, wherever they played, they scored 15, 16 goals in the last 4 games. What if we play as well as they can, but they beat us 5-0? I got in cold sweats thinking about people questioning my integrity and the people I work with. Even watching the game back, there was a comment somebody mentioned to me in commentary saying Tottenham are having a real go here. Now, when he said that, I kind of went, like that. I kind of did that kind of face. I didn't quite laugh at him or laugh at it. I think I guess a slight chuckle at the fact that they would say Tottenham are having a real go here, because I know under Postecoglou that's what they're going to do. And he kind of used that within his answer. He said, you're laughing about it, but that is 26 years of my life. If nothing else, people should know about me. I love this game. I'm very principled. I would hate to think, as Manchester City could have done to us, we're on the end of a heavy defeat and people would be questioning whether I prepared the team. And before people say that's not going to happen, we know on social media that would have happened 100%. And I would be up here trying to defend myself. And once you start defending yourself, you know what happens. You're defending something. That's why I was animated on the night. I didn't enjoy the night because I needed the boys to, and credit to them, aside from anything else, our football was outstanding on the night. That was important, not just to me and the players, but for our football, because again, it would have cast aspersions on us as a football club when people are measuring us, saying, well, I don't think anyone will say that we didn't make Man City earn that win the other night. And it could have gone a very different way without anything changing from us, just by Man City being Man City. And I thought that was fascinating. It was a really kind of interesting insight into a different kind of aspect of it. And we know Postecoglou is very hot on the whole integrity thing. He was asked earlier in the season, was it about Eric Dyer, I think it was, and whether he had actually been injured. And he went mad at that. Like, don't question my integrity. If I say he's injured, and all this sort of stuff. So I think the thought that a titled, a game that is kind of has an influence on the title race, that Spurs, one of his teams would lay down and let the other team score, which is like one of the worst things in the world for him. And to actually say that he was anxious, I was quite, kind of felt quite privileged. It was a real opening up answer. I almost felt like was like a therapy session or something. He was really getting a lot of it off his chest in public. And yeah, I kind of felt quite privileged. It was to my question as well, and it was a really important one as well. Then I asked him about Bentancur, and I said, because I felt before that yellow card, I thought that was the Bentancur of pre-injury. I thought he was superb. And I kind of asked him, whether that's... We did get to see a little glimpse of the Bentancur we're going to see next season. I said this 9 months back, that the feeling around the club and the medical staff and everything was that Bentancur we were not going to see the best of until towards the end of the season into next one. It was going to be... That's cruciate ligament injuries are so difficult to kind of get back from until your best, and for a long time, how long it takes you. You've been out for 9 months with it, and then obviously you had the ankle injury on top of that. And he said about Bentancur, I thought the whole team was outstanding, but yeah, he was, and I think he felt that, and that's why he got frustrated. Part of the issue for us this year has been what I spoke about after the game. In more specific terms, we've had a real lack of discipline around our football. Earlier in the year, it was mainly red cards and yellow cards that cost us really badly. Towards the end of the year, it's been a real lack of discipline in sticking to our football principles. There's been too many times when we've let ourselves down in that and we've paid a price. The goal they scored was a little snapshot of that, with Rodrigo giving the ball away. You see, he said that. I'm pretty sure it was Romero gave the ball away down the right-hand side. I think he clattered it into Foden. And then he's right in what he said next. And then because of that, Rodrigo wanted to make amends, but he's already on a yellow card, so he can't bring the guy down. So we're paying for 2 bits of ill discipline against a team that's very disciplined, and they just go and do what they do. They have their moment and they score their goal. I thought, as painful as it was a good moment for us to really crystallise after the game. Again, I was obviously not very happy after the game because we'd lost again, but when you asked me about foundations, I couldn't sit there and be disingenuous and say that our foundations were strong when we'd lost 5 out of 6 games, and big games. That's the reality. So part of that was just being the discipline, and going back to the question about that being embedded, we've still got a long way to go. And then I asked him a couple of questions about, potentially, is there going to be any staff changes for him next season and stuff? And he kind of went on this little kind of side thing about how, when he said about changes, people just assumed he meant people leaving. Said it just means the way we work and bringing in more people. And actually, there was quite an interesting line in that answer. He said, I've got a much better picture of the environment now and what we need. And the club has been really supportive to say, whatever you need, extra resources, different kinds of people to bring in, it doesn't necessarily mean people will leave. And the club has been really supportive about that. So that'd be interesting. I wonder whether we'll see some coaching staff changes. Whether that's more coaching staff or some leaving or being replaced, we'll see. But I do wonder whether he's happy with that side of things. And then the other one, it was an interesting thing because, again, we'll talk about this when we talk about the match, but obviously it was the setup was excellent against City. It was a different system. It was used, or a different setup was probably the best way to do it. We had the false 9, Pat Matasar mostly playing in that, Maddison occasionally playing in the role, but mostly Sarr, with Johnson and Son out wide. And it worked a treat for long periods. It's one of those games that it's such a shame. Spurs essentially made 2 mistakes, 2 goals let in, and had they taken their chances, of which they had quite a few, I think the system is being heralded as a terrific bit of tactical kind of outclassing Pep. But individual moments matter, they do. And he was asked about that, whether he'd thought about that tweak for a while or whether it was reactionary. And he actually said some interesting stuff. He kind of felt a need to defend himself a bit more than he normally does, Ange. He said, no, I've always said in my career that necessity is the mother of invention. It was probably one of the biggest misconceptions about me that I have just one plan. I've used every system in the world in my career, often during matches, often during seasons. I've played just about every formation you can. I just thought we were obviously a bit short up front, and with the way City set up and the way we wanted to play on the night, particularly Pat, because he's got so much energy and running capacity, but he's also a quality footballer. The idea was to make them uncomfortable on the night and give them something they weren't expecting. It's a lot easier than people think to tweak those things. You don't have to work as long as your principles stay the same, and that's where I am. The principles about having the ball, about pressing, those kind of things don't change. It is just the way we do it in terms of positioning. I think that question came from George Sessions from PA. And he also asked a really good question about the fans. And this was the last question of the bit of the press conference you see broadcast. And I thought the answer to this was the one for me where I felt he kind of explained a little better. his thoughts on the fans and the way inside the stadium, the atmosphere being slightly subdued and everything. So I am going to read this out because I do think it's quite a good one. So the question from George was, the Spurs fans base has been attacked in recent days, and it's been suggested the trophy drought caused the mindset of fans on Tuesday night and wanting the team to lose to stop Arsenal winning a trophy. Is that fair? So he said, I don't know what that means. Supporters are there to sort of back their club and they do their bit. They've certainly done their bit for us this year. I mean, the amount of games we've won late at the stadium this year has been extraordinary. That's the crowd, and anyone that's been in the team, the supporters have played a big part in that. Now, like I said, the last game I don't understand, and I hold my hands up, I got it wrong. I sat here the day before and I mocked the whole thing because I really didn't believe that was the case. But if that's how people feel, and again, I can't because I'm not a Spurs supporter. They are, and this is their football club. They are the custodians, not me. All I can say is offer my opinion of what you need to be successful, and for me, you can't be successful if your motivations change depending on the contest. You've got to win all the time. If you're playing your brother, you've got to fight to the death. He's still your brother, but you've got to fight to the death to win. I wouldn't want to be Ange's brother. There's just been me my whole career. That's just been me my whole career. It wasn't just a Spurs supporter thing. Everyone I heard was saying the same thing, that they understood how they feel. The same way they understand how they feel. Well, I don't understand because I'm totally different. I just can't think of anything worse than not going all in on victory every time we're out there. But that's me. So I feel like he said it in a better way. He explained that, it's up to the fans, and they are the fans. It's their club. They have every right to do what they want to do and support the club the way they want to support it. And if that is being more concerned about how Arsenal finish their season and whether they end up having to hear the endless kind of bragging from Arsenal fans about it, that's fine. That's a way to, I guess, be a supporter of a club. But it's just not for Ange. And yeah, as I explained earlier, it's kind of not the way I normally see it either. And that's, I've had people moaning at me about that as well. But that's my opinion. We're all allowed to have different opinions. That's the thing. I don't shoot down other people's ways of supporting. There's no wrong way really to support a football club unless you cross over a line and you become just unpleasant and abusive, I guess. Everything else is fair game. Just crack on and support it the way you want. But not everyone likes different opinions to their own. We know that. We see it every day in practice. But yeah, I thought it was a really interesting press conference. It's two in a row, really. This one was two sides of Postecoglou. The other night, it was Storm Postecoglou, Storm Ange, blowing through the Tottenham Hotspur stadium. He was, raging. Whereas this one was more a kind of a calm down, thinking about it all, and looking forward, I guess. It was good. It was fascinating. Honestly, if you get a chance to watch it, Spurs obviously always put out the full YouTube version of it. Do give it a watch. It's good. But yeah, Tuesday night was something different. Tuesday night was... sometimes the journalist side of me overtakes in these situations, and that was definitely the case on Tuesday night. I have to separate the fact that as a, always been a Spurs fan, growing up a Spurs fan, being disappointed with the result, again, goes back to what I was saying earlier, that I did, of course, want Spurs to win it. Spurs, won that game. They put pressure on Villa on Sunday to finish in the Champions League spot, and I know that's not the be-all and end-all to some people, and there's a theory about it. Sometimes the Europa League maybe being better for Spurs. I get it all. I just wanted Spurs to win, and they still had something to play for. However, when I go into that press conference and he started down that road of answering my question in that way, journalist me switches, absolutely flies into action. I'm just thinking, wow, okay, this is really fascinating stuff. This is not what you get in a normal kind of bog standard, sometimes generic press conference. His first two answers weren't really anything out of the ordinary because we'd been warned. He was kind of on the warpath. We knew that his BBC interview was 44 seconds they managed to get. So it's like, okay, he's sometimes after defeat he can be a little bit shorter. But yeah, that was something special. And the first two answers didn't really give anything towards that. And then in steps me for question 3. And kind of, I've got the exact quote here actually. I think the last 48 hours have revealed to me that the foundations are fairly fragile, mate. So, and he just kind of left this just hanging in the air. And it was like, we're all a bit like, I think we expected it to be kind of a half positive press conference because Spurs had played so well. And really, probably for most of the game, were the better team. But just, the way City are, they're clinical in big moments, and Spurs won't. But we kind of expected to be, like he was saying, we gave them a go. We didn't lie down for them, and we really kind of showed what a team we can be next season. But yeah, he was not having it, and that kind of, we all did a bit of a double take, and there was loads of us, well, say loads, maybe three of us all trying to get more out of him, get more kind of clarity and specificity. It's been a long day, a long week. It's more of a kind of an exact idea of what he was so unhappy with. Specificity. Oh my God, I don't know why I'm continually trying to do it. So it's myself, Charlie from The Athletic, Dave Heitner from The Guardian, I remember asking questions on it. Maybe George as well, and Tom from The Sun. I think Matt Law was. We were all trying to gather exactly what he meant. And yeah, it was, he just wasn't really giving anything away. He just said, look, things in the last 48 hours have revealed, a fair bit to me. And look, there was a strange atmosphere in the stadium. Of course there was. I actually thought there wasn't going to be at one point, because before the game, it was reasonably noisy. The stands weren't empty. I know there'd been a lot of people, I think, trying to get rid of their tickets, but a lot of people had clearly bought them. I think it was over 61,000, the attendance. And yeah, I kind of looked around the stadium and felt, okay, maybe this isn't going to be like that. And just as the game wore on, the atmosphere became more and more subdued. Apart from when Spurs had good moments and got forward, it almost became a little bit like Spanish football that sometimes you see with the big teams there, that the fans were, when they were entertained, they were cheering, but they were not going to maybe cheer the team on too much. And it was this really kind of awkward atmosphere. It wasn't as awful as some were painting out it was going to be, but it definitely was a bit of a different atmosphere. And then, of course, you had the, after City scored the first goal through Haaland, there were Spurs fans singing, "Are you watching Arsenal?" And then I think too much has probably been made of the whole Spurs fans doing the Poznan, the Man City celebration turnaround. There weren't many, I don't think. I know TV kind of zeroed in on 2 or 3 of them. I don't think I saw many around the stadium, but I guess it was a thing because some Spurs fans did it. But yeah, definitely the minority. And yeah, it was, I guess that kind of must have, I think it did. It just shocked Postecoglou because his team had played well. 10 shots on goals to City 8. The 2 goalkeepers that City had to make 6 saves between them. Vicario only made 3, albeit a couple of really good saves, but the City keepers were far busier. And yeah, he was just irked by it all. You could see it, got under his skin. And now we know a little bit more because he's spoken about it more and how kind of wound up he was, I think, by the whole day. And I kind of kept pushing because that's my job. It's one of those funny ones where you'll get some people saying, "Oh, well, why'd you keep pushing that?" And then I'll get other times where people, "Why didn't you ask about that?" It's like, I kind of had to, and I think we needed a bit more clarity on it. And so I asked him, "Are you talking about inside the club, outside the club, the fragility?" And he said, "Outside, inside, everywhere." It's been an interesting exercise. It didn't seem like it was the players he was talking about on the day, because he very much was kind of sticking up for them and talking about how well they played. I do wonder what he would have said. We didn't ask about it today. We had enough other stuff to kind of talk about. But he kind of stormed down the tunnel after the game, quite quickly after the final whistle. I guess maybe he felt, he normally goes around and thanks the fans. Maybe he felt, I don't know. I'm absolutely putting words in his mouth now, but maybe he didn't feel they deserved it on this occasion, perhaps. But again, and that's something I'm sure will annoy some Spurs fans as well. But yeah, I wonder what he would have made had he seen the facts of like Christian Romero having like little kind of being shoved by Postecoglou, shoved by Pep Guardiola and laughing with him. James Maddison laughing with Guardiola, Sonny laughing with him. It's difficult because on the podcast, Lee made some great points about that. Personally, I kind of looked at it like, ugh, after a defeat like that, you probably don't want to be laughing and joking with the opposition manager on the pitch. But then Lee made the great point that what else are you going to do in that situation? You know, it's one of the biggest, best managers in the world. It's coming over to you. You're just going to go like, no, leave me alone, and like push him away, kind of run off really awkwardly. You kind of have to react. So yeah, it's probably something that was slightly exaggerated in the moment, but I wonder what Postecoglou would have made of it privately. I don't think publicly it would have said anything. And also the fact that it was his three leaders. You know, it's his three leaders on the pitch, smiling and laughing with the opposition manager after a defeat that's cost them their place in the Champions League. You can look at it two ways. You can look at it like that, or you can look at it and say it's just an isolated small thing that doesn't need any blowing up. But yeah, let me know your thoughts again in the comments. I'm sure Postecoglou probably would have said that wasn't the biggest issue of the day. There was more to it than that. He did say one thing about the crowd, and he said, where is it? I've got it here. Whether the crowd and the atmosphere had an effect on the team. And he said, of course it does. It is what it is. I can't dictate what people do. They're allowed to express themselves any way they want. But yeah, when we've got late winners in games, it's because the crowd's helped us. So yeah, and I just asked him again, like, has this steeled your resolve in knowing what you want to do here at this club? And he said, I already know what I want to do, and I've just got to make some adjustments to how I do it. That was an interesting line for me. It kind of felt like almost like the gloves are off now. Okay, here we go. I'm going to make changes, and if it upsets people, it upsets people. So yeah, Sky picked up on that press conference big time as we were writing away outside. Back in the media centre afterwards, the media room. You could see Sky just playing on like a loop on Sky Sports News, which was very weird. Hearing my kind of Mr. Bean voice asking him the question over and over again. Whenever I think of my voice, it always sounds completely different when it's recorded. It brings me great dismay. But yeah, it was a fascinating press conference. It bore some strands of the Antonio Conte one at Southampton, that explosive final, exasperated press conference he did, but without the same kind of direct, I guess. This was more a kind of a brooding menace that and mystery, I suppose, to it under Postecoglou, whereas Conte's one, it was like he was making it very clear he was just taking shots at everyone. They were all the club's mentality, the players. He was going for them all, and yeah, it was an interesting one. It really was. It all comes down to, I guess, how you see the game and how you see football tribalism, I guess, which is such a unique thing. This is why I say I don't think you can really kind of tell anyone how to support their club, because everyone does it in different ways. There's no real right and wrong whatsoever. I kind of noticed there were three distinct camps, I would say, of Spurs fans going into that game against City. There was the ones who just wanted Spurs to lose. You could see them. They wanted Postecoglou to either put out a team of kids. I saw lineups of 11s that had Daniel Levy in it. I saw them saying, put Brian Hill in goal. I saw me. I turned up in some of the lineups as well. You know, you wouldn't have lost the game if I was in. That's not true at all. Absolutely not true, especially after my performance on Monday. I was not up to my previous standards in that media match whatsoever. But yeah, and look, as I said, Postecoglou's not the one who's going to hear the bragging in the office from the Arsenal fans, or, you know, on the WhatsApp groups and stuff from fans and things like that. So I get that. But the other second group after that were the fans who didn't really want Spurs. They wanted Spurs to win, and if they didn't, though, they weren't going to be devastated. It was like, well, at least we've stopped Arsenal. That was kind of the second group for me. And I think a lot of that group also were in the camp of Europa League is maybe better. And maybe Camp 1 or Group 1 are also in that as well. Because, yeah, I understand the logic about the whole Europa League thing. I would have preferred just getting a Champions League, because I just think you want to be at the top table. You want to be among the best. And I think it raises you as a club. We saw that with Spurs in the past. Not a waste, but, you know, the season that even when they weren't flying in the league, and they kind of, from February onwards under Pochettino in his last full season, messed it up a little bit, still finished fourth. Champions League, they reached the final. So I don't think it's as cut and dried as they would really struggle in the Champions League. I don't think it always works like that. But I absolutely understand the logic of the new format. The Europa League is not going to have teams dropping down from the Champions League. So yes, on paper it is a more winnable competition for a team like Spurs. Some people might say it devalues it slightly. It means it's not as hard as previous years. But quite frankly, who cares? Spurs need silverware, so I get it. And I do think that is a big thing about it. And how kind of few trophies Spurs have won in so long. Well, not one, isn't it? In decades. And then the third group is the one that I guess Postecoglou thought was going to be the biggest group. The ones who just want their team to win regardless of what goes on around them. And unfortunately, despite what he expected, I think he even said 100% of people in the stadium will want Spurs to win. That wasn't the case. It just wasn't. I mean, it may have been, maybe, but if it did, it was definitely a subdued kind of version of the Tottenham Hotspur kind of support that we've seen in that stadium. And yeah, I mean, he'd been quite clear in the build-up. He'd said he couldn't understand anyone wanting to see the team they support lose. And yeah, I just felt his comments after the game, they did infuriate quite a few people. And no one likes to be told off. No one likes to be chastised for their views. And especially when you're a long-suffering bunch of supporters that have been so starved of success. This club has been mired in mediocrity for a long time, many years out of, I mean, when was Spurs probably... I mean, you're going way back, aren't you? You're probably talking FA Cups, aren't you? I know under Pochettino, obviously, they had a few big finished second, a couple of years where it was a title challenge. But if you're talking about silverware, League Cups are great and all that. I probably still go back to 1991. I do, I think. Look, don't get me wrong, I would love a League Cup, but I don't know what. I think I just attach slightly more importance to the FA Cup. But I get it. Anything's important right now. Spurs could, I was about to say Spurs could win the trophy they're playing for probably in Melbourne next week, but no, that's not important. And look, I saw some people criticising him in another way. They're mentioning about where was the performance against City, why wasn't it there against Arsenal and Chelsea, and the trips to Chelsea and Fulham and Wolves, both of those games as well, home and away. Yeah, and the idea that Spurs would never have been in this situation had they actually fared better in those important games. It kind of suggests, though, that Postecoglou was not angry after those games. He would have been furious. I know there's a couple of those games he was absolutely raging behind the scenes. So I don't think that's the case. But I get it. I think there was a sense of outrage that the fans could be criticised for something, and that's all great and stuff, but the players aren't doing it on the pitch. And I get that. The one that probably I didn't really get was the argument that Postecoglou doesn't understand the derby. He doesn't understand the hatred. The guy has been in the Old Firm derby, slap bang in the middle of it for the last 2 years. That is up there with the most hate-filled derbies, rivalries in the world. As someone who half his family come from Glasgow, I know very well how vicious and unpleasant that derby can be, and it's linked with more than just football. So yeah, I did think that was the one. I saw that a few times being said, and I was like, yeah, I don't really get that one. Actually, interestingly, tonight in the 10:30 kind of quotes that will come out tonight from Postecoglou, there's a little bit talking about his time in Glasgow, which is quite interesting with the parallels between the derbies and the rivalries and everything. So keep a little eye out for that. It'll be on my Twitter feed. But yeah, I think he would have alienated some fans with his comments. I think there will be a little bit less patience among some for the change that he now wants to implement. I don't know. Perhaps that is the reason that he picked the fight. He does like to kind of almost have a bit more of a challenge sometimes. And look, he said it himself. He wants a club that just thinks about itself. And as I said, you see that on the touchline. He doesn't really argue with officials. He hates it when his players do that because he feels it's distracting them from just getting on with scoring goals and winning games. He is very much a man who doesn't like to kind of waste breath or time. He just wants to win. And I kind of get the impression, although obviously he was quite conciliatory in some of the words he was using, he didn't really backtrack on his views about it all. And I kind of feel like if he has to start a fight, I guess, with some people and ruffle some feathers in a way of changing the mentality around the club, I kind of feel like so be it. And I know that might annoy a few people, but I just kind of feel like it's been a club that hasn't achieved what it should be achieving for a long, long time. It really hasn't at all. And I think kind of if you can change some of the viewpoint, there is an element of it that I do feel as maybe was a bit of a one-off, well, hopefully a one-off in the way it was, and the situation had kind of occurred for it to happen. But I kind of think, yeah, if you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelette, and at a club like Spurs, I'm not against that. And it was a positive game on the whole. Just obviously the result, it sounds ridiculous when you've lost 2-0, but I do think there were a lot of positives came from it with that. The false nine. I mean, Guardiola said in the game, all the game they were incredibly aggressive, Tottenham. I suffered from minute one. People suspected, no, I'm not going to win. We don't want to give the title to Arsenal, but it was completely the opposite. Spurs are so fast with Kulusevski, Maddison, Son, Johnson, the runners of Porro and Sarr. They have a lot of weapons, and we knew we had to suffer. And yeah, as he kind of suggested himself, all this talk about no plan B and all that, there was absolutely a plan B there. And yeah, I do wonder sometimes when people see things in a little bit, make it a little bit more simplistic than it is in football. You can have the same system, but absolutely different kind of formations within it and different ways of playing and different focus on certain ways you're going to build up the play and stuff. It's not quite as simple as plan A, plan B, all of that sort of stuff. And I actually thought Dejan Kulusevski did well when he came into the. He wasn't so much a false nine. He played probably more up as a bit more of a traditional number 9, trying to hold the ball up and running with it. A couple of good chances actually. One of them bounced between Ortega's legs. Really could have gone through it. And at the base of the midfield, we had Hojbjerg and Bentancur. Mixed performances. Hojbjerg worked quite hard, I felt, but those technical struggles that he'll sometimes have, and especially maybe shown up in a system like Postecoglou's, there were a few. He misplaced passes, one horrible slice to Foden that he was fortunate that Vicario made a terrific close range save. And like I say, I thought Bentancur was excellent until that yellow card. It was right up there with one of his best kind of performances for me. Probably Old Trafford being the other one, and obviously that first half hour against Villa was a biggie. He was supporting the attack at one moment, he was getting back to defend the next. Everything about his play was so tidy, and it was allowing Spurs to beat the City press and get around them and cause them real problems. He had an early shot that was pushed over by Ederson. He just did really well. And that 36th minute yellow card for wiping out Foden, which was a bit of a needless challenge. It wasn't kind of an important area to do that in, and that proved his downfall because, yeah, when Romero kind of messed up that pass, you could see Bentancur just running alongside Foden doing that like thing where they know like I'm not going to touch him, kind of thing, and that just allowed Foden so much time to get down there, puts the ball across. Eventually, it goes to De Bruyne, and De Bruyne knocks it across to Haaland to score. And Bentancur only came off 3 minutes after that. I think that was why he was so furious. I'm sorry, I'm getting flashbacks to seeing Brian Hill's face now. It just eyes were so wide, he was so terrified. And then poor Tyrese Hall, amazing moment for him, 18-year-old Tyrese Hall, making his debut on the bench in a Premier League game. And he's like on the other side thinking, what is this? Is this what first team life's like? Yeah, and he lobbed a water bottle as well afterwards. And I think he kind of said that, didn't he, in his answer today. I don't think Postecoglou, even he had seen it at the time, would have had too much issue with it because it was a guy showing passion about it. Another positive on the day was Radu Dragusin. I thought he was really good, really composed, slotted into the back line like he'd always been there, and against some of the best attackers in the Premier League in the world in Man City's players. And I felt he dealt with a lot of it really well. 4 tackles, 2 interceptions, one aerial duel. And I think as we said this before, he came in as one of the best defenders in the air this season in the Serie A. And that made a difference for me. Spurs looked so much more in control at set pieces. I mean, it may just be that not only did they have him, but they also obviously had kind of an extra centre-back with Van der Ven pushed to the left. Although Van der Ven, I think his heading is still a big area of his game that he's got to improve on for someone his size. But I just thought it was a really important, promising performance from Dragoshin, because just reminded everyone he's class. I saw the stories about like Napoli looking to sign him in the summer. Spurs would be mad to sell him straight on. That would be just... I can't see how that would happen, but it would be incredible. I think he'll get a lot of game time next season. Obviously, it looks like hopefully there's going to be European football. But also, Romero and Van der Ven will get injured at times as well. And he's going to play far more games. And he's only, 22 years old? He's going to be top draw. I really like the look of him. He's big and strong and he's good on the ball. He proved exactly how the scouting of him was so good. A bit like, do you remember back in the day when Van der Ven, he was the cheap option. We want Tapsoba. And Van der Ven obviously has proved to be one of the best defenders in the Premier League this season. And I think with Dragoshin, there's an element of some people maybe judged him on his price tag. And I think he's going to be a very, very good acquisition for Spurs. So yeah, like I said, that pushed Van der Ven onto the left back spot. Postecoglou had made it clear previously it was his hamstrings that kind of stopped that. He didn't want to push him too much. I'm still not a massive fan of it. I'm still not. You know, you've heard me kind of talk about this before. I thought he's a solid option there. And I probably would use him there again this weekend if Postecoglou isn't worried about his hamstrings and it being an issue, just purely in a way to kind of get Radu Dragoshin another bit of game time. But I do think if you're asking Van der Ven to be the inverted fullback, I don't think he's quite as effective at it. I know he scored the goal, which was a lovely goal against Burnley, but I do feel in terms of the midfield play that you're supposed to contribute in that role, it maybe doesn't suit him down to the ground. And most of all, it absolutely knackered him out. It was one of the things I think I warned about before, that as a centre-back, he will occasionally make those sprinting runs and he will do it brilliantly. He'll be full of energy and he'll absolutely roast them for pace. At left back, it is you are constantly up and down, coming inside and everything. And after about half an hour, Van der Ven looked shattered. There was one moment I looked at him and he was kind of hunched over. Someone was going to pass him and he kind of waved them away as if saying, no, don't, please don't, kind of thing. I don't know why he'd sound like a bricklayer in the 1950s. I don't know why that would be a bricklayer's voice either. But he was, I think it's a temporary half solution, makeshift solution. I wouldn't like to see it as a regular thing at any point. I think you lose him from the position that he's best in. It'd be interesting to see what a Van der Ven Dragoshin partnership looks like. And we'll see that at times next season. I think it could be a very good one. You know, Romero obviously is a bit of a leader and the aggression he brings to that back line. I'm intrigued to see how those two young players kind of play alongside each other. Who else? We've got the wide men. Yeah, mixed days. Sonny and Johnson. They're both threatened in moments. How many did... Johnson had 3 key passes. Maddison had 4. I think they were the 2 most key passes on the entire pitch of any player, which kind of shows you how much of a reduced threat City had. And I would say, yeah, Sonny got probably into the best positions. He had 4 shots, 2 on target. Of course, the biggest of all came from Johnson pass, which sent him clear. And yeah, that big moment where it was Ortega in goal because Emerson had collided with Romero. And it just gets a leg out there, Ortega, and gets it to it. It was weird. It was more reminiscent of, do you remember the early days when we used to say about Sonny that if you give him a split second, he'll probably score because he's not have to think about it. If you give him a bit more time to score, he probably won't. But Sonny hasn't been like that for a long time. Sonny is the kind of guy you trust in like years now to run through and put that ball into the net. And it was a bit like, it was a bit of a kind of a back in time kind of moment as well. And yeah, even that was a bit strange. It was like an awkward kind of reaction to that in the stadium. You could see on social media people celebrating the fact that he'd missed, calling him a club legend and stuff like that, Spurs fans. it's all very awkward. It really is. This was the first time. I know we don't really look to give social media credence, but this was the first time where you could just see elements of it creeping into the stadium, which I think was what just surprised Postecoglou. And then, of course, came the penalty, didn't it? Pedro Porro they were up the pitch trying to find a level. Porro gets caught out by Doku, who is, I think he could be a remarkable talent. He's got a bit of everything. He just needs to. He reminds me of how Sané was, Leroy Sané, before he kind of became a more complete all-round player. And yeah, Porro just had a nightmare with him. Brought him down. No real complaints about it. And Haaland strokes home the penalty. Another big positive moment, though. Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore got his debut, became the youngest player to have ever represented Spurs in the Premier League and come on the pitch. You know, you'll have heard me spoken about him in the past. He's a big talent in the youth setup. And this, I think, was just kind of a good reward for him. He's done a lot of training with the first team in the last month or so. Had a couple of low points with injury this season, so yeah, this was good. And then Postecoglou was asked about him after the game. I think it was George who asked him. He said, "This is Postecoglou. He's been training well with us. We wanted to get him some game time. It just hasn't panned out in the last few games. It was an opportunity to get him out there. He's still got a long way to go. He's only 16. He's a great kid. It's a reward because we've had him training with us and he hasn't been playing with the under-21s either. We thought it wouldn't be fair to not reward his hard work with an appearance." It was really weird. I saw Mikey Moore today. I was just writing up the last bit of my press conference stuff, and the reception area next to the press conference room is also the reception area for the academy players. And just seeing Mikey Moore there, he was just mucking around with some of the other young players and laughing about things like about lockers and stuff. I think they had been playing pranks on each other or something. And just in that moment, you're suddenly like, oh yeah, he's a 16-year-old. And you kind of remember he's just a 16-year-old trying to kind of enjoy life and be a kid. Yet, 3-4 days ago, he's on the bench in a Premier League game against probably the best team in the world. And he comes on and he did all right. He had a good little kind of 10 minutes or so. It was a long added time that he got. He did one clearance inside his own box. And what I loved about the way he played in those 10 minutes was it was like something that you'd hear people say about top players, and forgive me for saying this, but I always remember people saying about John Terry, that as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, he would go on the pitch and tell everyone what to do. He would not have any fear. He would tell the senior players, pass there, that man's free, do that. And I saw Mikey Moore doing that on the pitch as a 16-year-old, and I loved that so much. Sometimes young kids, when they get their chance in a first team, they're so concerned about their own performance, almost to their detriment. They're quite nervous. Mikey went out there and he was instructing these experienced pros what to do with the ball. Whether they listened or not is another thing. But I just thought that was really lovely. And yeah, just the contrast of then seeing him back again as a kid, kind of mucking around with his mates. It was really nice. It just reminds you of just how young he is and how far he's still got to go. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him kind of in the kind of next thing. I'm sure he'll be involved against Sheffield United, maybe get some more minutes. Spurs were quite keen to take him to Melbourne. But I think the current thinking, unless it changes again, he's probably going to be allowed to go and link up with England for the European Under-17 Championships, where he'll be a big player. And I was actually telling some people in Sweden, my visit this week, they were talking about those championships. And I said, watch out for Mikey Moore, honestly. I think it could be the kind of tournament he lights up. So yeah, I would be stunned if he's not on the pre-season tour to Japan and Korea. So I kind of think it is a better opportunity for him to go away to this tournament anyway, than it probably is to go to Melbourne and play a few more minutes for the first team. Hopefully he gets more minutes on Sunday if the scoreline's in a decent place. But yeah, that was really exciting. I mean, he's only played 2 games of under-21s football. He's got so long to go, and it's not one of those where we should get overexcited about him right now. But he's got a lot of talent, and if he keeps working hard, you'll see him getting little bits of more and more game time. I think he's 17 in August, and he's got everything about him. It's just there's a lot more to it. We know that. We've seen many very young talented players in that academy who have some of them have just dropped off the face of the earth, and some of them aren't even in football anymore. There's been so many players at Spurs that have made their debut and never kind of got more than that. And Mikey, he's got the talent to do much more than that, and hopefully we'll see him do that in the years maybe months, but mainly years to come. So yeah, I just wonder how this summer's going to be now. It does feel like, I kind of feel like Postecoglou kind of use the events of this week to really push on the project a lot more, and maybe get more done, I suppose. And yeah, it's. I've said this enough times. The old ways have brought nothing for so long. I couldn't believe it when I kind of realised Postecoglou on Sunday, at the final whistle, will be the first manager to complete a full season at Tottenham in half a decade. That's pathetic. That is absolutely pathetic. And it shows how much change there's been at the club, how much chopping and changing and never really allowing any kind of philosophy to grow. I just couldn't believe it. It just crossed my mind. Yeah, Pochettino in the 18-19 season is the last time a manager had a full season in charge of Tottenham Hotspur. It's just crazy. And look, this season there has been progress. I know it hasn't felt like it. 5 defeats in the last 6 has not felt like it because it's ended in this way. But I think if they can finish 5th, they're just a point to do that or more at Sheffield United. I think they have. I think, more goals I think there's been this season. They've got a chance to concede less. It's still far too many. But yeah, to finish 5th rather than 8th, to have 6, if they win on Sunday, I think 6 points more than they finished last season with. More goals, if they can finish with less conceded, that is progress. It is. Whatever people want to say, however angry you want to be about certain things, to improve in each column and to have done so without your best player leaving and the injuries in the middle of the year, I think there has been progress. But Postecoglou knows there's so much more to do. Of course he does. And I think it's important this summer that he gets lots more round pegs for the round holes that he's trying to kind of put into his team. And look, many of people, and myself included, you'll have heard me say in these videos, the club has needed someone to grab it by the scruff of the neck, shake it out of this malaise it's been for too long, and just drag it in the right direction. It's happened down the road. That team down the road, that is what Arteta's done. He has moulded that team in his own image. He has taken it away from what they were doing. And he has said, no, my version of that lot down the road. And that's kind of what Postecoglou is trying to do. And if you look back over his career, a lot of times in the first season, he's divided opinion about how it is. And that's everywhere. That's not just the fans. That can be the players. That can be staff, board members. It can be anyone throughout the club, support staff, whatever. But then the second season, whether there's some people leave or whether it is everyone just starts to fully buy into it, there's less mixed results, the performances improve, and the second season is like, boom, everything clicks and it goes right. I'll tell you one thing for sure. Guardiola sees Spurs as a bit of a threat. He does. When you've had a performance like that and you've seen that Spurs did kind of cause them so many issues for a lot of the game, he said they play with a lot of pride and intensity and it's so difficult to play against them. Spurs will in the future be unbelievable if they stick with a manager. That is, for me, probably the best manager in the world right now, saying that about Spurs and what they can be. It does. I just... The definition of insanity, isn't it, is always said as doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it kind of feels like what Spurs have been doing for the last... Well, yeah, like I said, I'd go back to 1991. Obviously during the ENIC era, the one silverware in that as well. But I'd even go probably further beyond that as well. There just have been a club that have not had the success that a club of their stature and fandom, the amount of fans deserve. And so just to keep kind of going over and over same old ground and not trying something completely different, which is what this is, and then sticking with it. Stop changing managers. Stop kind of, oh, that didn't work, let's do that. Oh, that didn't work, let's do that. And I guess that kind of is trying to change, but never truly wanting to change. It's almost an aesthetic thing, looking like you're trying to change what you're doing, but really everything that underlies, like fragile foundations. I didn't get the word that he said to me, Postecoglou. Try something different and stick stick to it, see where it goes. It might not end up being the right way, but at least you'll have tried. It can't be worse than what's come before, because they haven't really achieved anything before. Not for a long, long time anyway. In terms of something tangible. I know the Pochettino era has brought some great seasons, great football, great moments, but ultimately, unfortunately for Poch, he never got the promised land of silverware. And, Postecoglou said earlier this month, change is difficult, it's relentless, it's uncompromising, it's challenging. It doesn't leave you a lot of leeway to feel comfortable. It's part of that process, and my job is to navigate through that. It is, like I say, it's time to get something behind something at Tottenham Hotspur, even if it means upsetting people along the way. The club needs a change, it needs to go in this kind of new path, and maybe the sooner rather than later, if they do that, other teams will be the ones trying to stop them winning trophies and titles. That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have that scenario next season or one after, where it is an Arsenal or a Chelsea, like at the Battle of the Bridge, trying to stop Spurs being the ones lifting the biggest titles? Oh, it'd be lovely. It'd be like, how cool would these videos be? If I was talking about title wins and trophy wins, there would be no sighs in those. So yeah, that's kind of everything really about the whole Postecoglou state of things in the last week or so. Please let me know your thoughts on it all. I am fascinated to see the different viewpoints on it. Let me know what you thought about Postecoglou's answers today, and whether anyone that had kind of really got annoyed with the way he spoke after the game had maybe changed their mind a bit, or has it pushed you even more in the other direction? What of those three camps did you fall into that I spoke of before? The ones, wanted to lose the game, the ones who wanted to win it but didn't care too much if they lost, or the ones who just really wanted to win it? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just intrigued to see the differing opinions on it all. So yeah, that's all of that. Stockholm, I'll talk about a little bit like Lucas Bergvall. I went to watch him. It was two of his current club, Djurgården, playing Brommapojkarna, his previous club where he was raised in their incredible academy. And yeah, I got to see them play against each other. It was a bit of a tighter first half. I think it was 1-0 at the break. Then they pushed Bergvall into a bit of a more of attacking role. Bang! It was 5-0 in the end. And he's got it star quality. He's got that little something about him. You can see it. Even just kind of, I was waiting about after the game to talk to him. I'm just kind of observing the way he was and he is. He looks like a star. He's a bit of a kind of boy band looks. He's the poster boy of the sport I think Sweden want him to become. And he's a big lad. That was one of the things I noticed. I'm talking up to him while I'm interviewing him. I'm 6 foot. He's over that. And he's broad. He's really physically quite developed. I saw that in the game as well. He was not easily pushed off the ball at all. Maybe once, maybe twice. But certainly, yeah, he's physically, despite the fact he's 18, he's going to be able to deal with all of that. And he is a star there. They treat him like a star. There were loads of young kids waiting to kind of have selfies and autographs signed as well. He kind of did all that first. Then he spoke to the kind of the scrum of the local journalists there, and it was really holding court with them. They were all very much eating out the palm of his hand, laughing away at things he was saying. And then, yeah, it was my turn, and I didn't want to do it in the mixed zone area. I wanted him to kind of feel a little bit more away from everyone's kind of prying ears. So I took him out to the actual pitch again. Kind of feel like he's the kind of guy that feels more comfortable out there, and at least by the edge of the grass. And he's just a lovely lad as well. Honestly, when I said to him, "I'm sorry for making you do this all again and in a different language," he was like, "No, I'm really happy to do this. I need to practice my English," which was him being very modest. His English is incredible. It's absolutely flawless. And yeah, just a really fascinating young man. You notice his bright blonde hair. It's like, it is really bright. And there's some people, Peter Kisfaludi, who I've spoken to, who worked with him a lot as a young player and works with him now, is at Djurgården. He worked at Brommapojkarna as well before. He keeps saying, like, he's got the bit of the Beckham about him in terms of not only has he got a brilliant delivery with his foot and an ability on the ball, but he's that kind of one that will draw a lot of admirers, let's put it that way, beyond the game. And you know, if he can kind of match all of that together with the ability he's got, yeah, he's going to be a bit of a superstar, I think. But it was great. It was great. We had a really good chat about, life currently right now for him as an 18-year-old who has a lot of attention around him, because I think it was certainly a record transfer for a young player. I've got a feeling it maybe was the record transfer for any player. I could be wrong. Please do let me know, anyone who knows far more about the Allsvenskan than me. But you could see the players in the league a little bit rough on him. I'd read that he'd said that before, and I looked at it, and you can see that. You can understand it in a way in that he's living out their dreams, and they probably want to be like, why are you so special? And like really going in hard on him. But he just kind of shows the answer to that with a bit of magic. And it was a fascinating I got to see the two different sides to him on Thursday night in this game. First half, he was asked to play a very disciplined role. As a number 8 that was occasionally coming back into a number 6 role. He sometimes would roam a little bit, go out to the flanks, but mainly you could see he was trying to be very tactically disciplined. And he did it well. You know, he's got that, like I say, that physical presence to put in a tackle to. Quite good in the air, like I say, he's a big lad. And in the second half, Djurgården just took the shackles off him, and he played very much as an advanced number 10, sometimes drifting over to the left, like I say, sometimes to the right. And the entire game changed because he was in that role. There were two big moments which really just tore apart Paul Bromma-Poikana. And I should stress the context. Djurgården are up there. I think they're second in the Allsvenskan now. Bromma-Poikana are a team that's probably a much smaller team, more known for their academy, which we'll talk about in a second. And yeah, to give you an idea, 4,500 or so sellout crowd. Djurgården brought 4,000 people with them. There were about 500 Bromma-Poikana fans watching the game. And that kind of shows you the differences between the two teams. But just Bergvall produced these two moments. Not some nice little moments he produced, but in particular these two. There was one, this incredible, fabulous dribble he went on down the pitch. Played a 1-2 with another guy. Got to the byline and just played this impudent back heel across the penalty area, which another player knocked into the path of Dennis Hummert, who rocketed a shot off the crossbar. It was a lovely goal. Then soon after, if the pre-assist wasn't good enough, he got a full assist, Bergvall. He just saw Hummert running and just played this beautiful through ball into his path. And actually Hummert went on to score a hat-trick. He played very well as well. And I asked him afterwards, I could see that he was getting these rougher tackles from people. And I said, like, are you still noticing that? And he was like, maybe they tried to tackle me a little bit more now, but it's not that much of a problem. It's not like they're doing it too much. It's not like it's going to be any less than the Premier League. If anything, it's going to be much more. It's going to be really tough. It's the best league in the world. So it's probably good for me. And that was the way he was. He's so enthusiastic and positive. He's so excited about coming to Tottenham. That was the whole sense I got it. Even in the interview with me, he wasn't excited because it was me in any way, as nobody should. He was excited about the fact that it was like a little doorway, knowing that, oh yeah, Premier League, of course, Premier League's coming. I'm going to Tottenham, if he didn't need reminding. And to do an interview in English as well. And he's so mature. Sometimes you forget he's 18. Talk about Mikey Moore and seeing Mikey Moore in the situation where he's 16. He's acting like a 16-year-old, and as he should, and it was great. And then you see someone like Lucas Bergvall, who's got kind of all this kind of attention on him now, and he's 18 years old, but it's like talking to a man in his mid-30s the way he talks. And there's only little moments when that slips, and you can kind of see the 18-year-old. And one of those was, I asked him about Sonny sending him a text. Sonny sent him a welcome text just after he'd signed. And bear in mind, I think that was his 18th birthday, the day he signed the deal as well, with his 5-year deal, £8.5 million contract transfer from Djurgården. And I asked him about Sonny's text, and he said, I've got it here somewhere. He goes, it's crazy. I'm from Sweden. He's one of the best players in the Premier League and a real legend. And he texted me after I signed. It was really kind of him because he was at the Asian Cup, and I think it was really something for him to do that when he was so busy. He's a really nice, kind guy for writing to me and making me feel comfortable. And yeah, you could just see the enthusiasm. I love that. I love to see just players. Sometimes players can be media trained, and sometimes just when you see the real person within, it's lovely. It's a bit like with Ange today. He's probably so used to press conferences, and that answer to me, I just felt like we got a real insight into him, and I suppose a little bit of vulnerability in him as well. And it's quite interesting. I was speaking to some of the people around Jurgard and the club, and they were saying, actually, if you go back 6 months or so, Bergvall hated interviews. He really didn't want to do them. They had to really kind of almost coach him and get him into this kind of mindset that you're going to have to do this. If you're going to be this kind of player, you're going to have to do this. And actually, he seemed like a natural. He did. And like I said, I'd watched him with the Swedish journalists, and they're laughing away. And he's got probably about 6 or 7 of them, and he's just holding court. It's fantastic. So, Bergvall's comes from Bromma-Poikana's famed academy setup. It is just this club out in the suburbs, the western suburbs of Stockholm, and it's just not one of the big clubs. They've only been in the Swedish top flight, Allsvenskan, for about 8 years out of the last 20. They're kind of a relatively new club when it comes to their senior setup, but their academy is just incredible. It is probably, I think it could even be the biggest academy in Europe. It's got, I might have written it down, no, but it's got thousands enrolled in it. Every young player from around Sweden wants to go into the Bromma-Poikana Academy. They may not dream of playing for the first team, although they do give them quite early kind of introductions into life in first team football. Bergvall, for example, played when, I'm trying to remember if it was 15 or 16. I think it might have been 16 in the second division and helped them kind of get promotion. And then he moved to Djurgården. I think that was the way it was. It might have been just before they got promotion. But either way, they do give them chances. But this academy, Bromma-Poikana, when they go around the world to international tournaments, they beat the likes of Bayern Munich, Barcelona, the Milans, Juventus and stuff in all of these big tournaments. They are the ones that are winning it. And I don't think it's talked about enough. Everyone, when they think about it, thinks, the Ajax Academy. The Ajax Academy is great. And you don't really hear of Bromma-Poikana, but they are. They're a club that has got this long list of international stars. I mean, in terms of North London stuff, you've got Dejan Kulusevski's come out of there. Anders Limpar, that played for Arsenal and Everton, was there. Amanda Nilden, who's currently on loan at Tottenham Hotspur, winning for Juventus. She came through Bromma-Poikana as well. And also, a lot of people I think are going to be talking about this summer, Victor Gyökeres, who plays for Sporting and scoring lots of goals. He came through that academy as well. But all eyes now are very much on Bergvall as the shining light of that academy. I spoke to, when I was out there, Bromma-Poikana's head of, I'm trying to get his title right, head of youth and recruiting, I think it is, Tommy Soderstrom. He knows a thing or two about finding talent. Tommy has worked for years, or he did work for years as a scout for Man United. He's currently doing a similarish role for Ajax, all while doing this big kind of role at Bromma-Poikana. He was asked personally by Sir Alex Ferguson to become one of his scouts. He is a man that knows a lot about young players. He was telling me how he saw Michael Owen when he was 15, and just within a heartbeat, just a split second, was like, this kid's going to be just one of the best. And I asked him about Bergvall, and he was saying, like, Anders Limpar is probably the best player we've produced. The highest level in Europe is very difficult. Kulusevski is a very good player, but Lucas Bergvall is better than Limpar, and Kulusevski were at that age. They were very good, but Lucas in the future can be very, very, very good. He's a hard-working player, but a very good technician. When we were in the youth tournaments against clubs like Bayern and Barcelona, he was always named the best player in the competition. But now Tottenham must take care of him. He will play with the seniors straight away, and they must give him a chance. You must take care of the boy. He can be a top player in Europe. I don't know whether he was telling me to take care of him, because I can't do that. But presumably just towards the club and everything, and I guess having a little bit of patience. And I asked him kind of how is he going to adjust to the rigours of the Premier League, Sonstrom, and he said he's good up here. He said, don't worry about that, but they just must give him a chance. With the ball, he'll adapt very quickly. He's also very good with his head. He scores goals with his head. He's quite tall. Both he and Dejan are very good players, but Lucas is better at this age. He's actually scored a lot of goals. He's played a lot of minutes in the last couple of weeks for Djurgården. They've had like cup games and everything. He played 120 minutes last week. They had another game at the weekend. They took him off after 65 minutes in the game on Thursday night. Last night. It feels like days ago. They took him off after 65 minutes just to save his legs. He's got another game on Monday against Hampstead. And I just love his attitude. I asked him about that as well because he said, we've had a lot of games in recent weeks. I think it was a good call from the coaches to take me off. I mean, how many young players actually want to come off the pitch? And they kind of, you always see them like, when they've got to come off. And I asked him kind of what it's been like for Bergvall. I asked Bergvall what it's been like since that moment he signed. And he said, it's been a lot to deal with, you know, especially in the last few weeks when you have to fix everything for England, but you're also playing a lot of games at the same time. It's really hard, but it's okay. And I think I'm over that stage now. And now I've got 3 games left and I'm really happy playing them. So yeah, it is. It's actually his final week now of playing for Djurgården. He's got to play at home, like I said, against Hampstead on Monday night. He travels to, I'm going to kill the pronunciation of this, Mjällby on Saturday. And then he signs off his final game, fittingly, is at home at the Tele2 Arena against Hammarby on June the 2nd. And the way it works is the Swedish season has a little bit of a 3-week break at this point. After that, next week, he'll go out, I think, on international duty, and then he'll arrive at Spurs on July the 1st. And the interesting thing as well is that the Swedish season began in April. He had to do 2 or 3 months or maybe more of pre-season before that. He will arrive at Spurs and then have a full season that will last. He's going to have almost an 18-month season, or maybe a bit less than that, 16-month season or so. And I just asked him about that. And I was like, how are you going to deal with all of that? And he said, well, look, for now, I'm trying to do my best here for the supporters, for the team. I've got 3 games left, so I'm trying to put all of my focus here and playing the best I can so I can come into Tottenham in good form. That's one important thing for him. And then he said, then I have another pre-season. It's a double pre-season for me. In Sweden, you have 3 or 4 months of pre-season from January to April, and then the league starts. So I'll have another one. But he said, I'm not going to complain. I can't complain. And Spurs, I think, are going to look after him. They're going to try and work out a way for him to get little bits of rest throughout the season. And let's be honest, it's probably, unless he's absolutely remarkable in pre-season, he's probably not going to start and play every minute in those early months. He's going to be brought in maybe a little bit more gradually. Who knows? He could have an amazing pre-season. And he actually admitted, he said, Tottenham have done a really good job with the kind of the rest side of things, and they've offered me a few extra days, so if I want them, I can take that. But I think I have 2 or 3 weeks off. That'll be good. I'm going on vacation with my family and my girlfriend, and I'll have my last game against Hammarby, and then I go on international duty for maybe 10 days, and then I'll start at Tottenham on July the 1st. So I will have some rest first. It's fine though. I love this. I love football, but it's good, I suppose, to rest mentally and get your energy back. It's going to be a really exciting new season with a lot of good impressions to make on a lot of new people, so I have to be mentally prepared. So he's already made a good impression on Postecoglou. We know that. You've probably seen the little video of him doing his medical and speaking in that very confident, mature way he has to him. I asked Ange about him, I think it was in February, and he said, I think he's a really talented young player. Obviously, he's just at the beginning of his career. Johan Lang and the scout, I always called him Johan Lang, but when I was speaking to someone from Djurgården, it's Langer. Is actually how you're supposed to pronounce it. So Johan Langer and the scouting department did a lot of work with him. We met the family, great family, and he's a great kid. And I asked Bergvall about his chat with Postecoglou. He said it was a really good conversation. He's really honest and a kind man. We talked and he was really happy, and I was really happy too, of course. It was a really great kind of talks with him. And yeah, so obviously having watched him play as he did on Thursday night in these different roles, and a 6 at times, a 8 at times, a 10 at times, as a winger on occasions as well. He's a passer, he's a dribbler, and he's someone that can take a game by the scruff of the neck as well, despite the fact he's only 18. So I said, kind of, where do you think you're going to fit into Postecoglou's system? And he said, well, I like to have the ball at my feet and do lots of running. I play midfield, but I can come out on the side and I can get the ball. But to be honest, we haven't talked about that so much. I guess I'll be a midfielder, I hope. He said, kind of with a laugh. It's like, yeah, don't worry, mate, you'll be a midfielder. And I think actually earlier this season for Djurgården, he's played occasionally as like a support striker as well, so he can play that too. So maybe he might, I don't know, maybe he would, isn't it? But I think he will be a midfielder. I'd imagine as one of the 2 number 8s, he'll be absolutely fantastic as he gets older in those roles. He got Kulusevski as well. That's a big thing for him. They had a chat when he had to decide between Barcelona and Spurs. And I think that was quite a big kind of factor in it as well. Because, like I say, Kulusevski come through the academy at Broma Paikana. And I asked him about it. And when I mentioned Kulusevski's name, he kind of lit up his face. You could see he's maybe a little bit of an idol to him in terms of having done a similar route. And he said, yeah, he's from Broma Paikana as well, the same club. It's like as if I didn't know, I hadn't researched. It was lovely. He said, I've met him a few times. He's a really nice, kind guy. I talked to him and he said he's there for me if I need to ask him anything. He's had a really great time at Tottenham. He talks a lot about the club and how it's the beginning of a new era with Ange. He calls him Angie, with Ange as the new coach. And they're trying to build something up. They want me in that. So he just talks about the club and what they want to achieve in the next few years. And I also spoke to another character. I say character because he was a fascinating force of nature. He's Bo Anderson, but technically he's called Boos Anderson. Or Boose. I think it's Boos. He's Jørgenson's sporting director. So he's the guy that did the £8.5 million deal with Daniel Levy and Johan Lange. 55-year-old businessman, former striker. He played for Broma Paikana. He also played for Braga. And he's just, he was great fun to talk to. He's like a real character. Looks you in the eye, kind of not quite intimidating, but he's got this real strong presence about him, but would sometimes have this quite high-pitched giggle, which was really funny. It kind of belied all the stuff, and they call him Boss Boos or Super Boos. They call him sometimes over there as his nickname. I pointed out at one point about dealing with Daniel Levy, and I said, he's a fearsome negotiator, and he was like, yeah, but so am I. And he was really confident. It's fantastic. I'm going to have a full interview with him. I've just got to write it all up and transcribe it. And he's really interesting about Levy and Lange and the whole deal and the way it was put together. So I will get that out to you and I'll talk about it in a video as well. And he's just so confident that Jørgensen will get their money for him because a lot of it is in add-ons as well. And he said, when you buy a talent like Lucas at his age, you put in things that you know will increase the price if he produces. And with him, that's almost a guarantee because I'm quite sure Lucas will be a success and stay there for many years. It's not a bank guarantee, but in my world, it is that. Boos Anderson, went to the Hotspur way. He's been to the training ground. He also went to their stadium as well not too long ago to watch a game in the director's box. And yeah, he just said, I'm proud of Lucas now and I'll be proud when I see him play at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium because as a sporting director, you're there in the journey of his career. This is everything for me. From last summer with all the phone calls, all the contacts, all the people, and it ended up like this. I'll be proud of this transfer for all of my life. I mean, when you get on your 18th birthday to sign a 5-year contract with a big Premier League club, it's an amazing story. And he actually kind of, again, I'll go into all this when I do the full interview and get it out there. But I think there were a lot more clubs looking at Bergvall than actually got to the final stages. I think the ones in the final stages, I remember at the time, were Spurs, Barcelona. I think Eintracht Frankfurt got quite far as well. And then it ended up being this very close race between Barcelona and Spurs. And yeah, I mean, Anderson just thinks he's got a star. Spurs have got a star in the making in young Lucas. He said he'll be a very good player for the Swedish national team, and he's a different kind of person. He has the talent, and when in a club with better players and an environment that trusts in him with a big investment, the sky is the limit for him. And he said, I think having Kulusevski there will help him. Of course, having another Swedish person there and someone from the same background. Obviously, they both came from Broma Paikana. And I know that Kulusevski would take care of him, but I'm quite sure that everyone will take care of Lucas because when I was there, I could tell Tottenham are very much a family club. I saw the message he got from Sonny, and they were very proud when Lucas signed for them. So I'm not worried even if Dejan is not around because he will have the right, as in at times, because he'll have the right situation to work in. And yeah, I spoke to Lucas about whether he'd been watching a lot of Spurs and everything. And yeah, he has. He's been watching them and he saw Postecoglou getting angry in the press conference. And it was quite a weird situation where I'm pointing out to Tottenham's newest signing, yeah, that thing you watched about your new manager getting angry, that was me. I was asked the question and he was like, he's like fascinated by that. And he said, I've been watching a lot of the games. I watched the last game against City. They played really well, but sometimes it's hard. And I saw that Ange was angry. I read it was about Arsenal and all that. But I agree with him. I think you should always play to win every game, like he said. And that's quite important. I think that for Postecoglou, that's the attitude he wants. that is what he wants. Obviously, the supporters can kind of see things in a different way, but he wants his players to want to win every single game and have that mentality. And yeah, I thought that was really good. And I asked him just quite simply, what can you, the Tottenham, me, what can the Tottenham supporters expect from him when he arrives? And he kind of thought for a moment, and then he said, a really hard-working guy who wants to take the ball forward and score goals and play for the team and for Ange. And with that, it was kind of time to go. It was the end of the interview. And I know this is such a tiny moment, but for me, it just showed kind of how mature he is and how such an old head on his shoulders. We were kind of walking back towards down the tunnel area, and I said, I'll see you in pre-season. I'll probably be heading off on the tour to Japan and Korea. So yeah, we'll talk again there. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and went, oh, great, I will see you then, kind of thing. And I know it sounds like a tiny moment, but when I was 18 years old, I would never have put my hand on the shoulder of like a far older guy kind of thing that I just met. I would never have had the confidence. I'd probably be like mumbling, head down, see you later. And I just thought, I know it's a small thing, but it just said to me, it just feels like he's not going to be fazed by what's going to be thrown at him in Tottenham. But, it's going to be a big step up, but he is a talent. And like I say, I've managed to see a lot of young players. I've kind of seen the ones that I kind of have thought they're going to make it. And often they do. I haven't got the worst eye for a young player. There's sometimes outside influences and little things can affect their journey. But I just felt, even with the level of football, I think Tommy Sundström told me, he said the best clubs in Sweden he would probably put at a championship level. And Djurgården are one of those best kind of teams. And even within that slightly lower level, you could just see the quality. You could see the way he reads the game, the radar he's got for passing and seeing players. So yeah, he's going to be some talent, but he will need time to adapt. I think maybe more the physical side, the speed of the game, the tempo. But like Tommy said, he's got it up there. And he's got the technique, an incredible technique as well. So, Premier League beware is probably the best way I'd put it. I think he's going to be some player, but we've got to give him time to grow. And that's myself included as well. But it'd be fascinating to see. I think he's going to be one of those, I think, in the mix zone that the journalists are going to like as well. I think he's going to stop and he's going to be honest. He's going to be good fun, a bit like Decky can be like that as well. Maybe it's that Scandinavian nature of just kind of being quite honest. Christian Eriksen was like that. I know he's Danish, obviously, part of the whole Scandinavian thing. But when he would stop, when he wasn't pretending to be on his phone and ignoring us, when he did stop, he was a fascinating, great interview. So yeah, keep an eye out for young Lucas Bergvall. I really enjoyed my trip over to see him, and the people at Djurgården were lovely. People at Brommapojkarna were lovely. I'm going to do another like a featurey bit on Brommapojkarna and how they create these young players that Spurs are kind of getting the benefit of with Kulusevski and Lucas and Amanda Nilden as well. So that will come out as well. I've got a load of things I've got to type up, as well as I'll probably do them on the ridiculous 25 hours of flying to get to Melbourne. But there you go. Right, I need to go. I need to go and probably have a long sleep. But yeah, Sheffield United on Sunday. I'm not actually there. The ridiculousness of the speed I need to get the plane to get to Melbourne in time to race the team there, essentially, means I take off at the time of kickoff. And I'm going to have to try and work out a way on the plane to be able to either see it or at least keep up to date with it. And yes, I know it's very ridiculous. But yeah, because Spurs are going straight from an airport nearby on their private plane, they're going to get there very quickly. Well, as quickly as you can. But my way is going to be slightly longer. So yeah, I've got to be there because there's various events. I think I'm going to talk to a few players out there as well, and hopefully try and grab someone a bit higher up if I can. If Spurs let me, I know it's a very quick turnaround out there as well. I think they're only there for 36 hours or so. But yeah, we'll see. And then yeah, I'll rock up in the press conference ahead of the game, and Ange kind of did this nice little goodbye thing to us today, and just saying like thanks for kind of holding me accountable this season and the way that you've been and the support I have felt from you guys as well. And, have a great summer and all that. And then he's going to get to Melbourne thinking, yeah, I'm away from that lot, just the Aussies and me back in my hometown. And he's going to look in the front row or wherever I'm going to be able to sit. and he's going to see me. He's going, I'll be like, hello, and he's going to be like, oh no, I literally got away across the world from you, and you're still here. I think I may be the only UK journalist going, maybe. So yeah, that is going to be a bit of a shock for him. But yeah, I'm the only one crazy enough to do it, I think. But yeah, right, time to head off. We'll do another video. Whether I'll get some time to do it from Australia, we'll see. We'll see whether I get just a spare moment to breathe. Yeah, I'll see. I'll try and find the time. If not, it will be on my return. I think I'm back in the country next Friday, so we'll find some time either way. But yes, I'm going to head off now. So as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.